Welcome back to the shop. Today we got something kind of exciting, a little uncharacteristic, but we got a Klein Tools 1/4 inch impact driver. Now I predominantly have Milwaukee tools in the shop, and that's for a reason, because I don't want to have multiple battery lines. I don't dislike other tools. I think they all have their ups and downsides, but for sanity, I don't want to have multiple different types of batteries here. So I'm happy with M18 batteries, M12 batteries, and the 28 volt batteries. So that's kind of what everything here is focused around. But we're going to try out and see if we can make work one of these cheapy Chinesium battery adapters, and we'll test how this works with our new power supply that we made up. We'll see how much current the tool is, if the tool turns itself off, or what we got going on. So kind of excited to play around with this. Not thinking I'm going to get into a whole lot of other stuff. I'm not going to start buying DeWalt tools or anything like that, but I do think something like this Klein driver I'd like to play around with, and this adapter is going to live on it, much like the old school Black & Decker cordless that we redid. This adapter for the M14 battery just lives on this thing. So if I want to use it, I slap an M14 battery on it and we go. So let's get into this. Let's see what we got. Comes in a box. I kind of like that. Boxes are nice. This bubble wrap stuff is annoying to cut open, so I'm pretty happy when I see something comes in a box. We got some instructions. You can see there they pictured the DeWalt battery on it. Here's our tool. Get rid of this box here. Let's just see if there's anything exciting of note on the box. We have mentions the quick chuck, the trigger, the LED light, direction changing, brushless motor, and handles. So there's nothing overly groundbreaking on that. I guess I should have held it so you could see it. There you go. It mentions all those things. They are saying there's a RPM of 2200, impacts a minute of 3100. The weight is 2.3 pounds. Well, I guess we could check that maybe. And up to 210 foot-pounds. That's interesting. Maximum torque. So I don't think I can test some of this stuff, but we should be able to do something with the RPM. So let's see what we can do. So let's get the tool out. Comes in a nice plastic bag. And I gotta say, it's pretty solid. Now, it's to me reminiscent of some older tech. It doesn't look like the newest, latest, and greatest impact guns, and that was why I was a little interested in it, just to see. I'd like to play around with a few things here in the shop at some point. Okay, sorry about that. Had a little hiccup with the camera, but I was saying this doesn't look like the newest impact guns. We actually have an old Power Plus Milwaukee, though it's bigger because this is a brush motor. The way the anvil assembly is made is very similar. Obviously not a copy, but the way it's made is very similar, whereas the newer impacts from Milwaukee are a little bit more compact. So that's something that, you know, this Klein is quite a bit bigger than some of the newer stuff that's out there when you compare it to a newer Milwaukee. But when considering an older Milwaukee, that's why I'm saying it looks like a little bit older tech. I'm not saying this is a bad tool. I honestly don't know anything about it yet, so we're going to find out. But also, side note, look for this thing to get converted over to M14 at some point here on the channel. I like these old tools. They're kind of nice to play around with, and I picked this one up that's in decent shape. We'll play around with it. So let's get these out. They're not part of what we're looking at today. Okay, so the Klein here, let's take a look at it. It's got powered by DeWalt on it. And you can see this is your DeWalt style clip arrangement. Now, I don't know what deals they've made with DeWalt or anything like that, but it would be interesting to me if some of these other tool manufacturers that don't really have their own battery lines and they don't want to get into it, if they would either make different versions of the base, that you could get the DeWalt version or Milwaukee version or Makita version, you know, any of the big ones, or I think Milwaukee and DeWalt aren't too far apart. I wonder if they could make something that would be something that, I don't know, you could make a universal. I think they're different enough that it just wouldn't quite work out that way. But let's look at the rest of it here. We have, it's actually got a pretty nice feel in your hand. It's pretty ergonomic. They have these ribs here for your fingers to kind of keep it in place. The direction changing is at a good spot. You know, muscle memory for the last however many years has been pretty good with that. So that's, and it's smooth. It's very smooth. It's not like it's clunky. The trigger does not click or anything like that. It's pretty smooth through its motion. The plastic looks like it's pretty decent. Doesn't feel, it's not twisting or anything like that. It's very solid. This is a nice metal anvil assembly. Ram and anvil are in there. And then your probably planetary gears and your brushless motor and all that stuff. But all that seems pretty good. They've taken rubber down around this part of the battery housing, which is interesting. Looks like they have an accessory for a belt hoop. It might be the same as the DeWalt one, I don't know. They also have a spot here for a lanyard that can hold onto it, but the lanyard does not come with it, nor does the hook. At least this particular version, which is a BAT20CD. I don't know if we can get that in frame there. There you go. It's a BAT20CD, made in Taiwan, as you saw. Overall, I don't think it's too bad. It seems pretty nice. Boy, this camera's laggy. There we go. Seems pretty nice. Now, let's try out our DeWalt to Milwaukee adapter. This is going to get a little clunky, but sometimes these are the things that you need to compromise with. And it looks like the tool fits pretty nicely on this adapter. You can see the contours here. Pretty decent. Now let's see if the Milwaukee battery will go on her. There we go. The tool does not light up when you put the battery on. Some tools do that. This one does not appear to. And it makes it a little clunkier down here, but I really don't want to have other batteries here, so that's something that you just got to be willing to accept in my case. So let's see here. It comes to life, has a nice bright light. You can see that there. Let's see how long it takes the light to go out after we ran it. Not too bad. But it is a really nice bright light, so I know a lot of guys sometimes, if you're above a ceiling or something like that, you can use the light on this thing to try and light up your work area to get a little bit further with stuff. So that's kind of a good bright light is a nice feature. Let's see here how it runs. Runs pretty good. Let's see how the variable speed seems. So that's our slowest speed. I don't know, I count about 30 some graduations there, so that's a decent variable speed. If we went up through them all, that's not bad. So if you just go up through it, it's not bad. Decent variable speed trigger. So I was kind of curious because years ago, and I haven't played with DeWalt much, so don't get mad at me if you have modern DeWalt and I'm speaking completely erroneously. But years ago, in the era of Power Plus, this Milwaukee stuff, The DeWalt stuff had horrible variable speed triggers. Like, they would burn up, the graduations weren't very good, it was just very clunky. And it's honestly how I ended up going to Milwaukee, but obviously tons of time has passed. I hope they've sorted that out. But just in my own mind, it's something that kind of stuck with DeWalt stuff, and you know, that's a long time ago. But it's just one of those things that I look for now, because you had different tools and you experienced different things. So that all being said, let me throw together something that we can try and test our RPMs. I'd also like to try and get this hooked up to our voltage tester and see what voltage this thing drops out at, if it drops out, to protect your batteries. Because doing all this stuff is all well and good, but you gotta watch your batteries. Okay, so we've got this hooked up to our power supply, and I'll just hold it here. We have our leads on here. I actually made little marks to clue myself which one's positive and negative. And we'll just hold it here in frame so you can see it. We have our voltage set to 20 volts, and I am going to go in 10th increments, 10th volt increments. We'll just dial it down. Let's hold this like this, because then I can have control of this. So okay, so I think I figured out something here. These DeWalt style batteries, you need to have all 4 of these connections doing something. There's got to be some circuit in this adapter to get it to work on just 2, because if I try and attach this to positive and negative on here, it runs once and then it stops working. So I'm not sure what's going on with it, but if I hook it up through our adapter and go positive and negative, it runs fine. So we'll have to use the adapter, and that's perfectly okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our tool over here so you can see it, and we're going to just dial down the voltage. I'm not going to run it too fast. We go 19 volts. I know this is upside down, but 18 volts. 17. Should be getting near it. 16. 15 volts. 14 volts. So I had 13.8 there. Let's see where it restarts. Okay, so it came back to life around 16. I was just going a little fast, so let's redo that. I'm going to take it down to 15 and we're going to let it sit just to see if it's a timing circuit. Okay, so if I let go of the trigger, I can't reuse the tool, so that's interesting. So their low voltage circuit is acting a little differently. Now an impact gun is kind of an intermittent use tool, so that is very fascinating. So if we hold the trigger in, we can run this down a lot lower. .8 volts. I can run that down to if I hold the trigger in, but let's go up above 16. If we're just using it intermittently, 15. So at 15.1 is when it shuts you off. So I kind of like it when tools, and I haven't tested a lot of tools, so we might see this more in the future. I'm not sure what we're going to find, but that's interesting that we were able to run this battery down to 13.8 volts just laying on it, and then when you go for the trigger again it won't work. That could be a characteristic of DeWalt tools. I don't know. We'll find out. We now know that the Klein, this adapter is going to stay on it, initially turns off at 15.1 if you are cycling the trigger, and if you don't, if you're just ugga-duggying away, she'll shut you down at 13.8. So kind of interesting. I don't particularly like that 13.8 number. Okay, so now that we know what's going on here and that this is actually tricking the tool to think that it has a battery on it, interesting that that's something that needs to happen for the tool to run. But let's see what a full current is. We're at 20 volts, which is the nominal good charge. Let's see what full current is of the tool running, just freewheeling, not with the ugga-duggas going. So we see we're about 2.8. You saw the inrush when it tool started up. You saw it jump up to about 4 or so. Yeah, about 4.2. So not really bad. This isn't drawing a high amount of current. Now what I'd like to do is maybe we can have this rig hooked up and we could ugga-dugga something and see how it has a current draw with that. Okay, so we're starting to get a whole bunch of stuff out here. Perfect. Now we're gonna get out good old Veeder-Root tachometer. This is an earlier video on the channel that we got this thing working again. If you want, check that out up here in this corner here. We have since this is a 1/4" hex, we have a 1/4" hex to 3/8 adapter, and I happen to have a spare 7/8 Sunex socket, so we're going to put our tachometer reflective stripe on that, and we're going to use the same socket every time we test one of these then, so it's all kind of even. So let's put that on here. Okay, so this does not have a quick connect push on like that old Milwaukee does not, but the new Milwaukee, just push it on and it's in. So the Klein, in kind of fashion of older tech, you just gotta pull a little collar and she's locked. Not a big deal whatsoever. And place this. Now we have that 7/8 socket mark there. I think I'm gonna put it over it and we'll see how this does. But let's just see what we get. Hold the Veeder-Root at an angle that you can see. Watch the glare. Alright, here we go. So no load is like 2124 RPM, and it's pretty close to what they advertised at 2200 RPM. Okay, so one more test we're going to do here with our Klein 1/4 hex drive is we'll see if we can get close to the foot-pounds that they say that they'll get out of this thing. And all we're going to do is tighten these nuts as tight as we can, and we'll see what force it takes to break them loose with a torque wrench. So here we go. Okay, so they're tight. Let's see how much force it takes to loosen them up. Okay, so here we go. We have our torque wrench set. We're just going to see how much force it takes to loosen these. About 37.8 on that one. Reset our torque wrench. About 43.3. And our last one. $42.8. Now this was actually higher than we got out of the 1/2 inch one, which you'll see in an upcoming video, but interesting results. Okay, so we saw in the 40s, mid to higher 40s, which is exactly what we kind of figured this tool was at. We test this in another video, so I'm pretty certain these two are fairly identical with their rams and spring sets and everything else. We'll get into more of that in the video of this that'll be coming up soon. So we tested this. We got a decent guess-ish on the ability of it to tighten things. Nowhere near the claimed 210 foot-pounds. I think it's probably more around 50, but that's realistic for something with a 1/4 inch hex drive. You don't want 200 foot-pounds going through a 1/4 inch hex drive. Now we did impact on this, and you can see it's got some marks, but it's not that bad. So you don't want to kill these things. They're 1/4 inch hex. This, on the other hand, could probably stand to be a little stronger. There we go. I hope this was interesting. It's just a quick look at this Klein impact gun. I saw it. I got a good deal on it. There might be another one of these coming. We'll see. I got some deals on them, and I thought I would try them out. So hopefully this was helpful to somebody. If you are worried about what this tool might do to your DeWalt batteries, it's shutting down at a good, decent voltage, especially if you're intermittent trigger use. And it seems like a pretty robust tool. So, as always, thanks for watching, and have a great day.